thank everybody for showing up tonight on a Wednesday night here. We've been doing this type of programs now for a little over a year, and it's fun. I'm glad to see people are taking an interest into what we're trying to do here, and it's just a good thing to get old friends together and do this type of stuff. What we're going to talk about tonight, and Larry has done a great job of telling the story of the old Bristol store from the time of its conception until right after the turn of the century. This is not a picture of inside the store, but this is what the store looked like. Every general store in the country at that time looked like this, where you had the shopkeeper, the storekeeper behind the counter bringing the goods to the customer. You know, the general stores of that time carried all the dry goods. A lot of them carried implements for farming, and they carried a few lines of canned goods. The shopkeeper, of course, he stands behind the counter, and the customers come in. Here's a great picture of, Larry happened to send this to me, of two proud shopkeepers standing in front of their store. You know, back in the day, we think of the shops from back in the day as like Sam Drucker from Hooterville and Ike Godsey from the Waltons. You know, those are the kind of shopkeepers that we thought about. So I'm going to tell the story as I see it from around right after the turn of the century. So we're going to do the best that we can and tell the stories of that general store. We'll try not to. We're going to try not to go down any rabbit holes, lose any wheels, and we'll eventually get to where I want to get to in the story. This is a picture of H.B. App's store. I think Larry had dated that as 1910. Herman App was the owner of the store, ran it. He sold implements for farms. He sold everything: dry goods, hard clothing, winter clothing, not so much in the way of fancy clothes, but work clothes, boots, that type of thing. And this picture right here is around 1909, 1910. Now, Herman had two sons, Frederick and Earl. He also had a daughter. Herman died in 1913. When he died in 1913, of course, the kids were in charge of taking care of the store. And at that time, Frederick would have been 35 and Earl would have been 30. Relatively young men, given the job of taking care of their father's store. It was their father's dream to have a store. Now, I don't know whether it was theirs, but they reluctantly, I'm told, took over the management of the store. You know, they ran that store for another 10 years. The App sons ran it for another 10 years. Frederick, the older son, 35-year-old son, he ran it immediately when Herman had passed away in 1913, 1914. And then over the next several years, the younger brother, Earl, purchased his share in the store, not only from Frederick, but from his mother and from his sister. So Earl became the man running the store. I told you we might end up down a couple rabbit holes, and this is one of the rabbit holes that I run into right off the bat. Herman App dies in 1913, and we've got a 30-year-old man and a 35-year-old man going to run a store. Now, I'm going to say that those two young men would have seen so many things in their lifetime by that time that I don't know what the interest would have been to stand behind a counter in a store. I mean, face it, they had in 30 years, 35 years, they had seen You know, in this picture right here, you see an automobile, horse carriages. They saw it change from horse and buggy to cars. They saw the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk. They saw electricity come to Bristol for the first time. You know, if you're running a general store, a grocery store, any type of store, it'd be kind of nice to have some refrigeration. Up until this point, what they had was carry ice in, and that, you know, that would have made for a little bit harder way to run a business carrying produce. They also saw the birth of broadcasting with radios. Silent movies were coming on. You see ads about this time for the Lerner Theater in Elkhart for silent movies. You know, at that same time, the App sons run the store until 1923. Well, during those several years prior to that, the Spanish flu came through the country. We had World War I. There was an amendment to the Constitution in 1913 or so that suddenly made income taxable. Now that was something new. That hadn't been there before, but if you were the guy standing in front of a cash register, all of a sudden things get a little different. They also saw the Panama Canal being dug in 1914, and that changes the delivery of goods from one side of the country to the other by boat a lot faster than it used to be. And they also saw half the population, women, got the right to vote in 1919. So there was an awful lot of changes took place in the amount of time that these young men stepped up to the plate to run their dad's store. And these are all things that Earl App, who began running the store, would have witnessed in his life. And I'd be willing to say that even today, with all the changes that we see with computers and internet, I would not think that a 40-year-old today would have seen as much change in technology as a 40-year-old back then. Sure, we see computer change, we see that, but all of a sudden you've got people learning to fly airplanes and cars and all kinds of things. So since Herman App died, Earl's running the store, and I think the best way, there's nobody from that time period to sit and tell us exactly what went on, so we've got to do a little investigative work, and the best way to do that is to look at ads from that time period to see what they're thinking. This is an ad from April 15th, the Bristol Banner, the Bristol Annual, the high school annual. The name of the store now is HB App Sons. It's not HB App and Sons because Herman is gone. So it's the HB App Sons. See our line of implements. We've got a meat market. Now a meat market would be a tough gig back in those days because you can't just throw it in the cooler because you got to throw ice on it. Work shoes, work boots, all kinds of dry goods, and a limited supply of groceries. We're starting in these stores back then are nothing like they are today, where they've got 19 different types of green beans. And this right here is another one of them rabbit holes that when I saw this, I wondered, you know, what in the world are they talking about Marco Groceries? In the next several years, the next several ads, Marco Groceries comes up real big. I couldn't let that go. I had to figure out what that was. So I did some research and looked here and looked there, and finally Larry pointed me in the right direction and kind of figured out what it was. Marco isn't necessarily a company. Marco is a marketing plan, and it stands for Manufacturing, Advertising, Retailing, and Cost Accounting Organization. When you had a dry goods store or any type of store back in that time, you're limited to the goods that you sell, are limited to how good the salesmen are that sell it to you. You need to be able to turn inventory fast enough to make a profit. So there was an organization that a thought process, and it was started by Piggly Wiggly stores a few years prior to this. if they could manage from manufacturing until the products at the people's home, if they could manage what the people were going to buy, limit the amount of inventory that they had on hand, turn it over real fast, make a reasonable margin on it, don't mark it up too high, but turn it, the stores would be more profitable. The people would get what they wanted, whether they knew it or not, because there was an advertising campaign going on, and all the way from the manufacturers to the retailers. So that's what Marco Groceries was about. So that satisfied my sense of wondering about it. So you're going to see that the next several ads that go through here. This is from the Bristol Annual in 1916. You'll have to forgive the way that this was. I borrowed this. Someone else had made this copy. If the top wasn't cut off of this ad right here, you'd see W.W. Bickle Hardware Store. And right here is the H.B. App and Sons ad, H.B. App Sons, Marco Store. The ads that took place back in those days were a lot more personal than the ads of today. I mean, they're quite honestly asking for your business and apologizing and everything else if they don't get it. So that was the Bristol High School Annual in 1916. Here is 1917, a modern market for Bristol. They're quite proud of their large assortment of meat in a sanitary way. Well, that was probably a problem for a lot of stores prior to that, keeping meat fresh, keeping the blowflies off of it, and keeping it where it was marketable. So they were proud of the fact that they had a viable meat market. Over here is their annual announcement that they're going to have low prices due to the fact that they're using the Marco method of selling. And also they make it a point, a lot of the stores, all of the stores at that time would buy from the farmers, the local producers. You'd bring eggs in, you'd bring cream in, you'd bring butter in, even butchered chickens. They would bring them in and put them towards their bill, and in turn the company would turn around and sell it. Now, in a later story that we're going to tell, there's the story of the Urbanics butchering chickens on the other side of the bridge in Bristol, and they sold a lot of those to the King store during the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And you know, that was a way a lot of the people did trade. They traded it in, put it towards their bill. Bring a couple dozen eggs in, go home with a couple cans of peaches. Okay, here is 1918, and H.B. App Sons. It seems to me that Earl is constantly building to this store. By these ads, there's something new every year. He's doing something different. And here is 1918, Wouldn't You Roast This? Earl's buying green coffee beans, roasting them in the store and grinding them for fresh coffee. Actually, they had two gas-powered roasters in the store. One of them was for coffee and one of them was for peanuts. So they would buy them green, roast them, and then people would have fresh product to take home. He's proud of the fact that we're going to save you 10 cents a pound on the coffee, 25 cents a pound for coffee. Okay, here's 1919. Again, this isn't a very good copy, so I tried to make a little bit better. Not too much better, but a little bit better. 1919, H.B. App Sons Company advertising the Man Store. And to the cream producers, sell your cream at home in local, and they'll buy all the cream that they can get from the local farmers. Farmers would bring the cream in, they'd be paid so much, put on their account, and they'd be able to trade goods that way. So this was 1919, I believe, and here is 1920. All of these ads here were copied by Martha Pickrell from the museum back in '82. And I'm glad she did, because a couple of these annuals I didn't have. 1920, they're talking about the finest meat market in Elkhart County. Again, all of our meats are kept in the most sanitary way and were sold at the lowest price, consistent with us, with a well-regulated business. Now, you don't hear advertising like that today, telling you that we're going to sell it to you and we're going to make a reasonable margin. It just doesn't, you don't see that. But that was 1920. Okay, so here's 1921. H.B. App and Sons, H.B. App's Sons, store in Bristol is one of the brightest spots in town. Earl App, proprietor. He again talks about the reorganization and price adjustments so that they could have the lowest prices and the best value for their customers. Down here is another ad that ties in with us. Old Earl up here, he starts a side business, calls it the St. Joe Valley Produce Company. Manufactures a Valley brand creamery butter. Eventually this is going to become a creamery, Bristol Creamery, and Earl started this. He tells about, we'll make over 200,000 pounds of butter in 1921, we'll slaughter 25,000 head of poultry, and we'll pay out approximately $125,000 to local farmers. This man's doing quite a service for the local farmers, the local producers in the country, or in and around Bristol. And that's 1921. But with that, we run into some other issues. 1922, here's Earl App manager advertising St. Joe Valley Produce Company once again, makers of Valley brand creamery butter. He tells all the attributes of buying the local cream and all that and running it through the business. But he also runs an ad down here for the store. And I got to reading this, and I can relate to this a little bit. Here, an honest confession is good for the soul. For the last 2 years, we've been so engrossed in the business affairs of our business that we've not been able to give the personal attention to our business. And that tells me that people are going into the store and they're not seeing old Earl. Earl's taking care of this part of the business, that part of the business, and he's not there as much as the people want him to be. Now remember, there's more and more other retail businesses, grocery stores, dry goods stores. So, you know, I've run a small business where the people will tell you if they didn't see you when I was in your store yesterday and you weren't there. This is kind of what Earl's talking about here, and I can understand. Earl kind of reminds me of that guy on Ed Sullivan that spun plates. You know, he'd get them split, then he'd get that thing going, then he'd get another one going, he'd get another one going. And all the time the Flight of the Bumblebee's playing, and he's spinning all these plates and he's trying to keep them going. Now that's Earl. So what does he do the next year, 1923? He gets him another plate up in the air. And that's an ice cream parlor. The liveliest place in town is the Maple Lawn Ice Cream Parlor. Maple Lawn Ice Cream Parlor's E.B. App owner. Okay, now remember, he's buying all the cream from the local dairymen that are coming through there, and you know, selling that to his customers. But you know, if you want to make ice cream, you need to have cream. So he gets him an ice cream parlor, and this happens to be on the west side of the store. On the west side of those buildings, it would be lot number 2, and he starts a ice cream parlor. And in this ad, he says, we are putting our best efforts in trying to make Bristol a better place to live in, and by a liberal patronage of this parlor, puts us in a better position to furnish our Bristol people with plenty of entertainment. Now, you know, I don't know how entertaining eating ice cream is. I eat a fair amount of ice cream. My wife tells me the sound I make when I eat it kind of entertaining, but you know, that's not what he's talking about here. This is 1923, And in 1923, the very same ad, or very same annual, has these other ads in there. Congdon's Drugstore, Wayne and Ike's Barber Shop. But down here is a gentleman that caught my attention when I saw this in 1923. A.C. King, whole milk and cream. Now, A.C. King appears to be somebody selling cream, selling milk, probably a dairy farmer. And he provides cream maybe to Earl App at Maple Lawn Ice Cream Parlor. So, you know, that works out pretty good. I bet you these people knew each other pretty well about this time, 1922, 1923. But again, here's another one of these rabbit holes I run into, and I'm thinking, why in the heck would somebody want to do an ice cream parlor? You know, why would somebody, you know, I like ice cream, but, you know, that wouldn't be a logical thing for me to take place and to do an ice cream parlor. So I did a little more research. And this is in 1923 that he did this, but in 1919, Prohibition took place. 1919 Volstead Act made outlawed alcohol. And that made for a lot of unhappy people, I'm sure. You know, we're in a situation where we're not having chances to get with people. I really like this picture here.
That's me on the right.
Yeah, that looked like you. So one of the drawbacks, rather than the fact that these fellas couldn't get their beer and their other drinks, is the socializing. You know, socializing wasn't taking place like it used to. Yeah, that's. I took this right out of the annual, by the way. So old Earl, he gets to thinking about, you know, how can we, you know, these people don't have their alcohol, they don't have a chance to socialize, so, you know, it looks like it's pretty much a done deal. So old Earl, he opened an ice cream parlor. And suddenly it's a great place for the young people to meet, and ice cream parlors across the country take off, not just in Bristol, Indiana, but all across the country. And it runs that way through the 20s until Prohibition is repealed. And all of a sudden ice cream stops selling like it was. So anyway, you had these places where people could go and eat ice cream and see their friends. And old Earl, he built him an ice cream parlor that's on the west side of the App store. You know, he filled another niche there in town, spun him another plate. And that was in 1923. Well, in 1924, and Larry's already showed you this ad, so I'm gonna remind you and fill in a few things. Earl App sold the inventory of the App Sons store to a salesman by the name of Sam Whitmer, Salesman Sam. And Sam Whitmer didn't own the buildings, didn't own the property. He owned the inventory, ran the store, and it was for a little under 2 years that he had control of the store. Now, another thing that I looked at when I saw this ad, there was a couple things that stuck out to me. And right down here it says, "Yours forever, Salesman Sam, successor to Radio Wizard EB App." Now, I don't know what Radio Wizard means. I could never find it, but it's probably another plate that he had involved. And he got in, you know, radio was just launching at that time, so he may have gotten involved with that. But Salesman Sam, during his 2 years of running it, he was known for pairing real odd things together in his ad. And he had, of course, he had pink bloomers and pink salmon. Well, I got to look at he had plow points and pork chops, and odorless Limburger cheese, and all different things that Salesman Sam had. And he run that for nearly 2 years. And for at the end of 2 years, suddenly that inventory gets sold to two gentlemen. One of them's A.C. King. Now, if you remember, he was the guy selling cream a little while ago. And that A stands for August, Augustus C. King. And he had a fella named Ed Sands that worked with him for a very short period of time, but he helped him with the finances to get this store going. He even introduces themselves, what they're going to try to do, telling them that they're located in Apsold Stand. And that's K&S Grocery and Market Company. This would have been around 1925, not around 1925. So he runs the same ad in 1926. At this point, you'll see it's no longer two gentlemen, it's Mr. King and Sons, successor to Salesman Sam. But if you notice in this ad, he's still selling pink bloomers and pink salmon, but he isn't selling plow points and milk cans in this ad. You know, this ad's supposed to be funny, but he's actually, in this ad, he's telling you he's not selling farm implements anymore. He's back to selling dry goods and pink bloomers and pink salmon. So this, yeah, odorless Limburger cheese. So this is Augustus King, Gus King, and he has a son named Richard, an older son named Richard, and the two of them are running this grocery store. But he has another son, and that son is in Bristol School, and he graduates from Bristol High School in 1926. So if you look on this ad, on the same page, Bristol Lincoln Garage, and Earl Mishler was the proprietor in 1926. But in 1925, the proprietor was Fred App, the son who had started out in the business with following his father, the older son. He got involved in automobiles, and he was selling tires. And I wasn't able to track it down, but there were some automobiles that were sold on the very west side of the store, along with the implements. And even Claude didn't know who was responsible for selling those cars. I mean, there were several car dealers, not several, there were a few car dealers in town. Royal Carmine sold cars in town. But Fred App, he was involved with a shop and sold tires and all that stuff during that period of time that the Kings took over. And here's the younger son, Claude King. The people in school hung his dad's name on him, Gus, as a nickname. But when I saw this picture, I don't remember Claude real well, but I knew that was him right as soon as I saw the picture. You know, and this is his senior picture. He graduated from Bristol High School in 1926. And this next thing, this is actually a letter that was written by Claude King at the request of Martha Pickrell in 1982 to tell a little bit of the background of when he got involved, he and his dad got involved in the store. And he tells in there, they started working in the store during the summer of 1925, about July 1st. He would have graduated in the spring of the following year, 1926. He tells about Ed Sands was supposed to be a partner with my father, but financial difficulties on his part made it impossible. So Ed Sands bows out. Gus King takes the business up along with the help of his sons, his daughter, and his wife. They become running the store. That store will remain in the family until 1971, 46 years of continuous one family ownership. And in any town, that's quite a story to be told. Owning a small business for that many years is something. He tells how customers came in on Saturday afternoons and evening. They brought their produce, their eggs, their cream, probably at that time butchered chickens, and they would trade them off for other goods in the store, groceries and such. And he tells about sitting around people BSing around the cash register. I could relate to that very well also. A small business is a draw for the locals. And he also tells about band concerts on a bandstand from a wagon being pulled around the different places. Now, when Earl App had the ice cream parlor, that's probably a big draw. In front of that ice cream parlor was one of these bandwagons going through there. So Earl tells a little bit, or Claude tells a little bit about what the store had prior to refrigeration. You know, they sold bulk beans, coffee, rice, sugar, flour in all their bulk bins. They had bulk spices. They had bulk vinegar in barrels, kerosene in bulk. They sold garden seeds, cattle and chicken feed, baled hay and straw. The area that was the ice cream parlor, the Kings refurbished that, and so they could start selling cattle feed, chicken feed, straw, hay. Man after my own heart, selling stuff for the farmers. And they also sold work clothes, which the Apps had sold before. Didn't sell any dressed clothing, and they did all their own butchering. You know, Augustus would have been from a farm background. They would have probably butchered a beef up into half, or had another purchased hanging beef, butchered chickens. They would have brought them in there, and then they would have, you know, cut the halves up into cuts. Chickens were pretty much all sold whole back then, but they could have cut chickens up too. Their own butchering became restricted during World War II, according to Claude, and that would have been the rationing that took place. During that period of time, from what I understand, even out at the chicken coops west of town during the war, they had to put the windows black, so if anybody was butchering chickens, bunch of bootlegs at night, that was being done behind windows. I know of some people that were involved in that, and we won't go into that. But the thing that I got here out of this letter at the very end, we had 13 rental boats on the river for rent and delivery behind the store. Now 13 boats directly behind the store for rent to go out in the river, or to be hauled up to Mottville and float down. You know, we've got canoe liveries in town and all this stuff, but this store would have been right on the cutting edge of a really hot fishing area in the Midwest.
Oh, yeah.
Well, a lot of you guys will recognize, a lot of people recognize this picture right here. It's not a great picture, but you know where this is at. This is downstream from the bridge. Here are the islands. One of the things that several of us in here will know.
Good fishing hole right there.
There's a lot of good fishing holes in the St. Joe River, and St. Joe River was known for smallmouth bass fishing. And if they were given a chance to go up to Mottville and dropped off with a boat and float back to Bristol, they would have hit a lot of good fishing holes. And there's a lot of good fishing holes down this way. You know, you could go upstream, hit Hillbish's Bayou. If you go around the corner here, it wasn't too long before 1925 as that dam was washed out. There's a deep hole where that's at, still a deep hole. And I imagine the bass back in those days were stacked in there just like they are today. And good fishing spot. So anyway, here's a picture I found of, I don't know how he got 9 people in that boat, but I wouldn't have gone fishing with him that day. But it was a great picture, great way to pose for the picture. And from what I understand, there was a lot of fishing took place from not just local people, but people coming in and renting boats from Claude. So I took some pictures. Now these aren't necessarily people that anybody you know, but a catch like this wouldn't be out of the question in the St. Joe River if you knew where to find them. This is a picture that was taken out of Reverend Bruce Mosier's book.
You can't miss it.
Yeah, and this is Bruce Mosier and one of the Carmines, and I don't know the name of this fella here, but this was caught out of that same area. The St. Joe River was and is still a great fishing place. The King store was, you know, right on the cutting edge, having 13 boats that they could rent out, and they did it for a number of years. I put this picture on because I can. This is my grandpa, and this is the very same stretch of river that Bruce and the fellas were on fishing. He wasn't renting a boat, he had his own canoe, and he tooled up and down that river, knew these fellas here very well. Matter of fact, Bruce married him and my grandma. So they were good friends. But that's my grandpa, right across from where Congdons live today on the St. Joe River. This is a picture of Frederick App. He got involved in a lot of other things after his father passed away, and he had run the store for a little while. This is a picture, it's actually out of the 1918 annual. He was a Washington Township trustee for 1 year. And he got involved in motor repair. He had a garage, sold tires. I don't know whether he sold cars or not, but he had other interests. Both the App brothers had an awful lot of interest. I followed Earl after he left the store here in town. He stayed involved in the produce business the rest of his life. That was the Apps. That was the story from 1913 till about 1928. That's this part of the program. I've got something else for a little bit later, but let's take a break. We got coffee, got cookies. If you've got any questions, comments, or corrections, now would be a good time. And let's take a break and we'll get back at it here in a little bit.